Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Alex Bailey from Bailey and French, and today I am joined by the wonderful Dr. Keir Brain, fantastic clinical psychologist and lifelong friend, and also Sarah McClellan, the CEO and co-founder of Make It Human, not co-founder, founder of Make It Human. Sorry, I'm so used to saying those together. And I'm so excited to have these guests here today on our orange sofa. We are streaming live across LinkedIn, across YouTube, and also on Facebook, on multiple channels. And we've got hundreds of people registered for this live today. So thank you so much for joining us. We are going to be talking about what it means to be human, a really fundamental question that is so important at this point in time more than ever before, with the rise of technology and AI influencing all types of markets and industries and everyone across the world, in work and beyond. So thank you for joining us. I would love to ask you to join in and feel part of the conversation as we're going. We have a wonderful opportunity for you to share with us your thoughts and your questions in the comments. So please do kick us off by saying who you are, where you are dialing in from today. And I say dialing in, where are you logging in from today? We know we've got a really international audience on this LinkedIn Live, and people in all different types of organisations and industries, and we love to bring lots of thoughts and insight into the conversation. So I've got some of my team ready to share some questions with us and let us know where you're dialing in from. So please do share that with us now in the chat. We are based here today on the orange sofas in Brighton, in Sussex, in the UK. And really excited to get stuck into this conversation. So hello. We are going to start off by talking to Keir about what it means to be human from a clinical psychologist's perspective. So I met Keir a very long time ago, and you'll see her details on her profile. So do have a look at her background. We diversified in different directions in psychology, and we've continued to have fantastic conversations about people and humans for many, many years. And I couldn't be more excited to be talking about this topic with you here today, actually, because it just feels like we're just sat in the room on the sofa having a cup of tea, having a chat. So we've been talking about this in advance of this conversation, and I think we've probably just gone over round and round lots of different topics, but I would love to hear from you and share with everyone in our audience. What do you think it means to be human? We've been reading books on this, we've been exploring in round tables, we've been going to lots of different events about different topics around wellbeing, performance, sustainability. But right at the heart and core of what's going on in organisations right now is making us really question who we are. And you have studied this at length and work on a daily basis, on a really individual basis with people. Tell me what you think it means to be human, Keir.
It's such a massive and vast topic. So obviously I've been thinking about this and sitting with this since we initially spoke. And I suppose the first thing that occurred to me, of course, coming at this as a clinician, first and foremost, is, I suppose, the first noble truth of Buddhism, which is the truth of suffering. So the suffering. Ooh. So I know that might sound a little bit bleak, but if we are human, we will suffer. And that is an unavoidable and inevitable part of being human. And I suppose people don't tend to engage my services when things are going well in their lives. So I guess you could say I'm in the business of helping people, maybe in their darkest moments when they're suffering the most. That's when people tend to come and see me.
Yeah. That's a big kind of dark point, and it makes me worried. It made me worried about this beforehand because I like to have a bit of a positive kind of fun spin.
Don't talk about that.
Don't talk about things that make you feel uncomfortable or make you feel like it's negative.
Everybody dwell on that.
Work wants to flourish and thrive. But you're right. We really do need to confront some of the deeper topics on this, because when I was reading about it, I think one of the things that struck me kind of whilst I was reading, and I actually had a conversation this week in Paris with someone at a conference who noticed that I was focusing very much on the positive angle, on the positive side of what it means to be human. And I do believe that's probably part of my strengths really is and I work in that space. So it's not a surprise. But it does kind of, it makes me, I guess, slightly tense and nervous thinking, oh gosh, there is a part of this question that is a bit edgy, isn't it? How do we get into the good stuff? How do we, to have that balance, to be able to really recognise what we do differently from computers, from AI. We need to really understand all parts of what it means to be human, don't we? And suffering is big number one.
It's a part of it, and I think they also say in the Buddhist tradition, no mud, no lotus. So it's often through our darkest times, through our struggles, that something really quite positive and growth promoting can emerge.
Yeah, so post-traumatic growth is kind of quite a key topic, kind of that comes up a lot actually, more in organisations than I anticipated it would. I'm sure you've probably had that experience as well, Sarah. Have you heard of it in the work you've done?
Less so specifically, but certainly I think the angle around suffering is very interesting, because it does reveal, some of those inner workings of us as human beings, and actually, gets us in a position where we can understand what is it that we need to thrive, when are we at our best. And certainly, I've taken more of a kind of organisational view of what working in different types of cultures, different types of climates can do to us as humans, and how it makes us think and feel.
Does suffering, though, not narc you a bit? It's a bit of a word that I've not used. No, seriously, because it's not a word that I use when I'm working in organisations. Suffering sounds a little bit too intense. It sounds a bit too harsh. And yet we talk about burnout. No problem, don't we? It's like, that's a topic companies are happy to talk about and support in terms of our wellbeing conversations. But suffering actually takes you to another space. And I think, confronting it, accepting it, knowing that actually, yes, as humans, we do need to recognise that is part of who we are, but also, as you said, part of our potential growth.
Yeah. And I can offer you a softer
word.
Give me a softer word. Let's soften it a little bit. I just started reading Wintering, Catherine May's book, and she is using wintering to describe what was a very challenging and difficult time in her life. And I just really like that term, and the idea that we all winter. It comes to us all at some point or another, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's about how can we prepare to winter better or winter well.
Oh, I like that.
Just as we're preparing to move into autumn now. So maybe that's a more acceptable or accessible way to describe what I'm talking about.
It's lovely. It's quite a nice positive way of talking more about being a bit more resilient. And people are a bit tired of using the word resilience in organisations. I think, the thought of having waves and waves of change that we have to prepare for and then cope with and manage and recover from actually stops us from thinking about the psychological flexibility we need to be able to, as you said, kind of winter and accept that there's going to be stages that are challenging, and there's going to be some elements of suffering in and outside of work or ways that affect work. But as humans, we can go through that, and we can support ourselves, and we can really hone in. So tell me what else then? What else makes us human? There must be something beyond suffering.
So beyond suffering, then I thought about the fact that we all have a nervous system.
A nervous system.
Yeah. So we all have a central nervous system, and I suppose I'm drawing on my training as a somatic experiencing practitioner here, which is based on the work of Dr. Peter Levine, and it's all about working with trauma at the level of the nervous system. Trauma, overwhelm, stress, burnout, all of the things that we're all subject to at some point or another. And I suppose our nervous system positively has an inherent capacity to self-regulate. And the idea, so we can come back into balance. Like when the conditions are supportive, we can get stressed out about things, but we can also come back into balance.
I like that. I like that more than the suffering bit.
Yeah, I can tell. Yeah. And the idea that we're constantly in communication. From the level of one nervous system to another. So our nervous systems are constantly talking to one another through the process of mirror neurons So
we talked about this.
Yeah,
So
we
Goldie
did.
Hawn on Instagram this morning, I saw her talking about the fact that people feel so lonely and isolated. It's because we're all on our phones, which is so true. Parents and kids, and we complain about our kids, but I'm on my phone just as much.
Yeah.
And I say I haven't got any time, but I've got hours apparently to spend on my phone. So but she was talking about the fact that actually people need people. The mirror neurons make you feel good. So when I'm sitting there looking at you, Sarah, and you're smiling, I want to smile. And yesterday when I was in Paris talking to those amazing people full of energy, it's like we were energizing each other. There was something so important about that social connection. And I love the fact that you brought that nervous system aspect in, because it's everywhere. It's almost like sometimes I think sometimes in organisations we don't talk about our whole human selves and our body and our the way
Our biology.
it functions and our biology, in a way that perhaps we could do that more, rather than leave it to kind of a yoga session where we can go and explore it further, but actually really think about what are the impacts of our nervous system when we're about to enter a board meeting? What are the impacts on our nervous system when we haven't met our targets, and or when we're setting goals for ourselves and writing objectives? What does that do to our nervous system? That's a question I hadn't thought I was going to ask you. What do you think of that one?
Well, I think throughout the day, we all go through cycles of what we would refer to as activation and deactivation.
Yeah.
And they are kind of two sides of the same coin. So we need a certain amount of sympathetic activation or charge within our nervous system to get us up and out of bed in the morning.
I do. And a bit of caffeine.
We all do, exactly. Caffeine is part of the sympathetic charge. And so that's not a bad thing. We do need it. I suppose when it becomes problematic is that when we have too much stress, we go into the realms of too much, and then we're overwhelmed and feeling burnt out, and we feel like our capacity to cope is compromised. We feel kind of squeezed, and even the smallest things can feel like a really big deal. So it's like one more thing on the to-do list can send someone spiraling into a place of feeling completely overwhelmed. So the flip side then of the sympathetic activation is the parasympathetic deactivation, which we would access in things like a yoga class or meditation or walking in nature or the rest and digest mode of the nervous system. And we need both. And as I said, when the conditions are conducive, our nervous system has an inherent capacity to move quite naturally, smoothly and easily through cycles of activation and deactivation. I suppose things become difficult and problematic when we have too much stress. Again, we're in the realms of too much, and that's when we can get stuck in the parasympathetic branch. So we talk about being stuck on. So it's
stuck on. I like that.
Yeah.
Because I talk a lot about keeping your human switched on, but that's slightly different. That's
It's
about
very different.
Not falling into the subconscious, but actually at being stuck on. That resonates actually because that's happened to me, right? I'll get really excited about a conference. I'm speaking at something 3 days in advance. I can't sleep until I'm there. I'm absolutely stuck on until that moment. Have you experienced that as well?
It's a really nice phrase. Actually, just listening to you speak, it's made me think of Inside Out too. The film that's come out, the second one, which is really about children going through adolescence and new emotions, new aspects of their neurosystem waking up, and anxiety and the impact you see, from a visual point of view, just as you were describing, how that just completely overtakes. You are permanently on.
So you're absolutely right, Sarah. Like anxiety, being stuck on. That's where anxiety lives. So that's anxiety, that's stress, that's overwhelm, that's burnout. And then in the extreme, when we can't maintain that state of being stuck on, then we kind of can flip into like a dorsal kind of shutdown, a freezy state, which is, burnout in extremis, when we just feel completely immobilized.
I know, and it's devastating. I've got friends who've been in that situation, and it's so scary. When especially when it's someone you love, and it's just like, oh my goodness, you can see someone, because they don't let that persona come out at work and it happens, I've said it previously before, people could drop off a cliff up until that day. They can just seem completely, absolutely fine. Yeah. But it's the hiding and masking a lot of that. And I love that point around that, the Inside Out movie, because I follow Lisa D'Amour, who's the psychologist that helps support that. And she's amazing on Instagram. So for anyone who's there, and Steph watched Inside Out last night. Thank you for sharing that. But it's such a relevant piece, isn't it? And actually, I love the fact that my kids went to see that and came back talking about emotions in a way. And I was like, oh my goodness, they sound like psychologists. That's pretty cool. We're moving with so many ideas buzzing in my head around this. And I think what I love that you're talking about is the reality that we all recognise. And I think that's the thing that, it's so hard to be authentic and genuine in the moment when things are becoming overwhelming, but recognising that we are human and that is a differentiator, but also that that's okay and that we can use that to understand others, we can use that in leadership roles to be better at supporting humans in organisations, particularly at a point when we are at overwhelm. Organisations have got the most limited amount of resources I've ever seen this year. Loads of organisations are restructuring and setting new strategies for 25 onwards. It's almost like post-pandemic, people were setting very short-term strategies. It was 20 to 21, 21 to 22, being very cautious. What's the market doing? What's going on in geopolitics? We've had the election year of everything this year. Everything's been kind of steadying. And it feels like 25 is the first year we're going into some big visions, some big targets, some big commitments. How are people feeling about being human in a world where we're being asked to do all of this? And by the way, use AI to assist you to do it all. Hang on, I need to learn how to use AI first. So I've got a bit of a hurdle first of doing my day job whilst I learn how to use AI to help me eventually. So there's a little bit of a hump coming, I think, for people. But I'm really interested. What else is there about being human here? Anything else that you would shout to?
I suppose my final point that I was going to speak about is, the fact of our interdependence.
Love it.
That as human beings, we are inherently relational. We need other people.
Yes,
and
we do.
We really need other people. And that we really can thrive in the company of people who, I suppose, to use clinical terms, are psychologically safe, with whom it feels okay to ask the silly question, to make a mistake, to stumble over your words, to say the wrong thing, and then come back from that place.
And to make that connection, I think sometimes as well, for the first time when you meet new people and you feel comfortable in their presence and their conversation and the way you are, that's so lovely. It's a lovely moment. I've just met a whole load of new people, so I'm in that lovely bubble of all these wonderful people out there. And I think just feeling that people are inherently good, feeling that people do care, is really a key important part. So I've been doing obviously quite a lot of research around what it means to be human, and looking at that differentiator with AI being a real crux of where organisations are at right now is. And this fear as well that exists that AI is somehow computers are going to take over our world and our jobs. And this AI, this generation, is simply just, as far as I'm aware, faster computers with more data. But it's
Sounds
all
about
being, but they are actually, they're being programmed by rules and
by humans.
Exactly. And in the same way that, we would say, sensationalist headlines, AI is becoming self-aware by talking about cars that can kind of park themselves. That's just sensors. That's actually misusing the language that we're used to using in psychology, in organisations and beyond, to really sensationalise and drive fear in people to feel that actually there's something bigger or more sinister going on. And that plays on your mind of the fact that actually there isn't, people are good, inherently, I'm sure people are good, but I am on the positive side of things, and there probably are, there's bad stuff that goes on out there, and we need to be careful that people feel comfortable to use AI
but I think to begin from a place of our common humanity, that we are more similar than we are different. And even when people might be behaving in ways that we might not understand or that might appear kind of bad to put a value judgment on it or abhorrent to us, that there is, I suppose as a psychologist and particularly as a clinical psychologist, I come from the place where I believe that all behaviour is fundamentally meaningful and functional to the person who is engaging in it in that particular moment, even if it's not particularly helpful. It's serving some purpose or it's meeting some kind of need for the individual at the time.
And so that leads me to thinking about some of Martin Seligman's work and his co-authors on the book Homo Prospectus. I mentioned to you both beforehand that I really looked into that. It was written in 2016, and again, like way beyond his time, because I read it first then and it was heavy, and I just moved on. It didn't resonate. And then I read it again recently and I was like, oh, hello, here we go. Actually, this talks to the things that are the true differentiators for us into the future, beyond what you've talked about at a kind of almost like a whole human level, really thinking about what is it that that allows us to manage our behaviour. And what I was really struck by was the book was really about how humans are actually able to change their behaviour by prospecting and anticipating and predicting the future as much as reflecting on the past. And I love that because I love being actually quite futuristic, and I'm always on to the next. And I know a lot of people are. But there's this tension around, am I more likely to change my behaviour because I'm anticipating a future event than maybe getting something wrong last week that actually I've kind of almost parked and like, oh, well, I won't do that again, or I won't engage there. What do you reckon? We had a conversation about the wedding thing, didn't we?
We did. I think change is absolutely and infinitely possible for human beings, but I also think we really struggle.
We do, don't we?
With change, we absolutely
in
do.
Organisations, I think everyone would agree with that.
Yeah, we do. And I suppose, from a psychological point of view, you could say like the best predictor of future behaviour is past behaviour.
Do you think that's true?
I think it can be. I think it can be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Just because people kind of get into a bit of a rut, and we can be comfortable with what is familiar. So to make change is to step into the unknown, and I think that can be uncomfortable for people. And I think change, while it's possible, it takes a lot of time, and I think that's why we see this burgeoning industry of like online kind of fitness coaches. We really most people are really bright. Like, we know what we need to do to be fit and healthy, but we really struggle with the consistent implementation of the 10,000 steps a day, 2 litres of water a day, eat more protein.
But I am more motivated, and we talked about this, I am absolutely more motivated to change my behaviour if there's an event coming up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So if I've got an event coming up, and I know we talked about the fact that, look, people might, for example, kind of diet for a holiday or diet for a wedding.
Yes.
They're more motivated around stepping into that space of, I'm going to change my behaviour because the anticipation of something. And I think that's really important. And I'm totally with you on the whole kind of change is hard thing, and in the past. Because, and I'm relating back to the book, so we've had a question come through from Steph about the book I mentioned. It was Homo Prospectus by Seligman et al. 2016. And the reason I'm kind of pushing into this space is because I think there is something about our human species that is overall is changing. And I think with this AI, this is just my bit of a prediction, and I could be completely wrong, obviously, but there is something about this era that we're in around the anticipation of AI and tech and what's going to do to the world and everything that we know, that I think might really trigger a change in how we change. So it might get us thinking much more about changing and anticipating for the future and predicting and preparing for things, rather than waiting for change to hit us and then kind of be the, oh, I've got to recover now and then build myself back up again. There's so much that's happened in the last few years, and I think it's really affected people. People are fundamentally really affected people. I mean, if you speak to people about and ask them the question of what pandemic did to them, everyone has a story, and it's completely different. And I think there's something there about that we're at a moment. There is something going on. There is a window at the moment with the focus on sustainability and climate change and the availability of people at mass scale. So I'm really interested and fascinated by how something from TikTok, one video, can literally go so quickly and develop a trend that can affect workplaces. That for me is just like, gosh, what are we not tapping into as occupational psychologists? What are we not thinking about in terms of using some of these mechanisms in a really clever way to influence change really positively and think about, predict and anticipate future. And I'm literally, as you can see, I'm animated. I'm so fascinated by that. Have you any thoughts on that one, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, huge area. But I agree. I think you're absolutely right. It feels like we are at this crossroads, and we were talking about this just earlier, that there is an opportunity, but perhaps there's also a duty that we have.
I like that.
That we're getting into. What is it that we're shaping? And just listening to you talk about AI and huge potential there, but equally AI is programmed and monitored by humans currently. Does that mean that we are accentuating our own human biases, our own human flaws? Because there's an irony in all of this, in that what makes us human is also very often kind of pulling us back from being our best humans.
Yes. It's not all positive.
It's not all positive. It's a mix, and the biases, the shortcuts that we have, the innate drivers to focus on ourselves, to take the easy option, to essentially we're lazy because we're conserving our energy. Yeah, we want a quick fix, and there's all this kind of programming that we've got with us that, to your point around being purposeful and deliberate, intentional, if we're not doing that, we can be careering off down this path that actually takes us away from the things that make us great as human beings, and the connection, the meaning, the growth, those elements that I think are so important. I totally agree, Alex. I think we are at this crossroads.
There's something going on.
Yeah, we have a chance, we have an opportunity to do something.
And we have a power. So I like the duty piece. Like, it comes to me around power as well. It's like we can have more voice. We can really feel and move things and shift things. And we have a choice as well. So we have a choice of where we spend where we put our attention. We have a choice of where we spend money. And I've been talking a lot about this week at this Supply Diversity and Inclusion Conference, really looking at how sustainability is shifting from a focus on net zero targets to really thinking about how do we make workplaces sustainable for human beings to maintain the jobs they're doing. How can we really make sure that supply chains are sustainable and supporting local communities and actually having a really positive impact on underrepresented groups right the way across the world? And how can we go much more think global and act global too. We have much more at our fingertips now than ever before. There's a huge opportunity to take this moment and intentionally do something good with it. And so that's really why we're starting to we've come back to this real big question around what it means to be human, because it does feel to me, it's a human planet. We are a species on this planet that has influence. And my great friend Kerry yesterday reminded me at a round table about David Attenborough's point that what human beings do on this planet over the next 50 years will determine the fate of this planet and all species on it. That is immense. That is such a huge statement. And we trust it, don't we? Because he's pretty knowledgeable.
So he knows his stuff.
He does. But really, that really puts on our shoulders the duty, the responsibility, the accountability to know what it means to be human, to understand what our differentiators are from everything, and do that on purpose. And I talk a lot about this, keep our human switched on, not get stuck on, but keeping our human switched on, because we know when we've had a really good human interaction. You know, don't you? And when someone's not switched on, you're getting some customer service from an organisation and you think, I am not really getting what I need here. No one's listening to me. I could as easily be talking to a chatbot here. It's like such a shame. It's such a missed opportunity. But if we could get to a point where people in organisations were comfortable and living and breathing in a way that they can have a balanced nervous system
and be flexible and responsive. I think that's the key. It's about having a responsive nervous system where we can oscillate between being on and off. We can go through cycles of
and know ourselves.
Activation and deactivation, and that with time and with practice and self-inquiry, we can come to a better understanding of what's happening at the level of our nervous system from moment to moment, and how we can kind of hack that. I hate that phrase, but
I like it in this context.
Okay, well, yeah, I thought you might like it, yeah. But how we can kind of work with that, to upregulate, like if we're feeling a bit sleepy and sluggish, or to downregulate if we're feeling, tired but wired and we can't come back down.
I wonder if that would be a response. If we'll get to a point where employers feel a sense of responsibility for that element, because we're increasingly, we've got the whole hybrid work. You need, do you need to be in the office? Do you need to be at home? Trust, but also energy sources, and to your point around wintering and the phases that we need as humans.
Yeah.
Do you think we'll get to a point where that is something that organisations are feeling a sense of accountability for?
I really worry that people are feeling accountability for that in organisations, but there is such a strong push around commerciality.
Yes. Yeah.
That makes it very hard for them to understand how we can be truly sustainable for humans in organisations, and still meet the commercial needs of the organisation and the operation. And that's where I think the large organisations are the ones that are going to have to lead on it, because they are the ones that have got the power, the resource, the investment, dare I say it, to do the things that make the biggest difference. But I see great teams and great leaders actually doing that now, really testing that question. We're seeing, functions being collapsed together and sustainability being brought into people experience functions, which is fantastic. Like, yes, we should be talking about sustainability across the employee life cycle, shouldn't we? When people are recruited, they should be able to ask the questions of what it's going to mean to be a human working in that organisation. And, I heard someone talk about, the do more with less type strategy and tagline. And you walk into an organisation and that's on the wall, that's telling you quite strongly how the organisation feels about sustainability and how you're going to be supporting that strategy. And I think that's where we have a choice, isn't it? So not just a choice of attention, where we spend our attention, a choice of where we spend, but a choice of where we work. And maybe that will be the turning key. And maybe it's already happening. So we see where, there's return to work, return to office, kind of mandates coming in, and people are, thinking, well, maybe it's time for me to move to somewhere that. So, it's about where we take ourselves on that journey to support what's important to us to be sustainable in a role.
I think there's something about where we work, and I think there's something about how we work as well. Even just thinking about my own kind of circadian rhythm, I know that I'm much better in the morning. So I could get up at 5, or I could start work at 7. And, I really like to front load my clinical work, because that's when my mind is at its sharpest. That's when I'm at my best. And I think there is something about bringing, of course, as a clinician, I'm going to bring it back to the level of the individual. I think there is something about people feeling empowered to advocate for themselves and say, well, this is when I know I can give of my best. And any leader with any sense would be able to kind of, support and facilitate that.
And that taps into the wellbeing question as well, doesn't it? I know we're shifting into a human sustainability focus from wellbeing a lot in organisations. I feel like it's a good shift. Wellbeing's not getting a great rap at the moment. And yet you kind of see some of the sharper sides of that in some of the work that you do, in terms of the impact where wellbeing isn't actually supported, or maybe it's being put too much on the shoulders of the individual for systemic issues that actually the organisation could be addressing differently.
Well, that's my personal bugbear, that both, the source of the problem and the solution to the problem is located within the individual in many organisations. So we'll pay for you to go and have therapy, or we'll pay for you to do yoga or Pilates at lunchtime, and we'll put on some well-being talks, but we won't address the systemic factors which are actually contributing to your overwhelm, to your burnout, to your exhaustion. And that, that's I come across that on a day-to-day basis with the individuals I work with who are working in a more corporate setting. It's a huge problem.
It is, isn't it? And that really, that's where I guess I see the worry around the AI and the tech of we should be making sure we're giving time for people to really test and explore across the organisation how they can use it as an assist.
Yes, as a support.
because there's a great opportunity there, isn't there? And I'm seeing that more now as well, where I'm seeing my team using AI and getting excited about it, and it's actually shortcutting things, and it's like, that's really helpful, that's really good, and that does do the level playing field thing.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, certainly in founding your own business, Sarah, you know, there's an opportunity there, isn't there, to instantly have stuff that you'd pay a fortune for consultants to create for you around building a business.
Yeah, and it is, you know, I think now you can set up and develop a business almost overnight because you've got those tools, you've got access. You know, you can become a marketer, not as good as the marketers, but you can. In theory, you can design content much faster. You know, the tools out there are phenomenal, and there is a shift towards. Perhaps it is tapping into this individual. What works for me? How do I sustain? There is a real shift towards people working independently. And, you know, there's data that's showing that's really going to take off and increase over the coming years, because we've got to work out how do we sustain longer lives and get the rhythm right and the phases, because we change constantly, whether we like it or not, to build something that's fulfilling and enables us to finance our lives as well. So it's certainly, from my perspective, that was a leap that I made earlier this year, and I'm finding it's challenging and enjoyable all at once.
Yeah,
and
great.
Perhaps it isn't something I could have done maybe 2-3 years ago with as much confidence that I can give this a go. You know, it's the right time.
And I think that's a really lovely and great story for people to hear as well, because I know loads of people are having the question in their mind all the time of whether or not they remain in employment or move into that space. And particularly for women-owned businesses, I've just spent a wonderful part of my week with some incredible women who've got their own businesses, and hearing those stories of role models and people who've made that leap are really important. So I'd love to talk about your book, which I'm really excited to say we have here. Yes, look, we have a copy, Make It Human by Sarah McClellan. I'm going to ask if there's any more questions to come through. Please type them into the comments, and we will come to those in a moment. But Sarah, tell me about your book. So I am I have mum guilt because I haven't read the book from cover to cover. I'm really sorry, but I do plan to read it. But I love that you're here to talk about it. Make It Human. There's quite a lot of books out there with human in the title at the moment, and I've been reading quite a few. So I've been doing a few book reviews, and they're all completely different. There's so much to talk about this topic, and you've written one for organisations based on your experience. And I tend to pick up books by people I like. So I will kind of read anything by Simon Sinek because I like him. I read anything by Adam Grant because I like him. And it's you know, I really do pick up that piece. So I'd love to hear more about your book specifically, yes. But I also want to hear a bit about you. Why did you write it?
Yes.
You know, not many people launch into writing a book first. But as they're setting up their organisation, they tend to take a while, and sometimes it's a bit delayed. It's a bit late, actually. So you've gone and done it. I'm really excited for you doing that, and it's a great role model example. Tell me about the book.
So the reason I wrote the book actually is a lot of the things we've been talking about. I do genuinely feel that we have an opportunity, we have a moment to shape something better, and I think if we don't, we're currently sliding down quite a slippery slope, and in organisations, in our lives, we're at risk of having more inhuman experiences. So there's a real big driver around that, and a lot of that actually is, I have an 8-year-old daughter, soon to be 9 actually, soon to be 13 in her head. But I was thinking more about, you know, what is her experience of work going to be like? And in theory, she'll go to work in around 10 to 15 years' time. And so the book starts with a view of what if we carry on this path. And by this path, I mean, you know, unfortunately, we are suffering. We are feeling the effects of working constantly, of technology and AI, and perhaps the negative, but also positive sides. And lots of people are feeling unhappy, they're feeling dissatisfied. And if we carry on that path, what is that going to do for us as human beings, as individuals? So it really is about how can we get on the front foot and be purposeful in shaping conditions and environments where humans thrive. Because to your point, Alex, I think we end up saying, well, these are the outcomes, these are the results that I need to achieve. We need to sell more, we need to grow as a business, we need to cut costs, we need to be more profitable. And because we're human, we look for the shortcut, we look for the easy way to do that, which often is, well, I'll tell you how to do it, or
and it's
sit
a
here
cost
and
of
do
our
that.
people.
Yes, whereas actually all of the science, all of the research, as you will both know very well, shows us when we're happy, when we're engaged, we give more, we're more creative, we collaborate, we bring our best work. We can't bring our best work when our brains are feeling frazzled, we're feeling anxious. I always kind of picture this brain on a cushion, that's what we need, and at the minute, very often we're creating environments where we're feeling tense, we're feeling stressed. So it really is that, how can we step into a place where we're at this crossroads, we can choose a path that creates something better and brighter for humans. And in doing so, it'll be better for our businesses and our world. So yeah, it's kind of a practical vision on how we can get there.
And what made you want to write the book?
That reason really. So having been a consultant for many years, a mum, I am more and more thinking about, well, how do I do something? How do I make a mark? In a small way, but how do I shape something using the experiences that I've had? And I've seen some brilliant organisational cultures, and I've seen some shocking organisational cultures. And so I think there is a recipe.
So did it all flow quite easily, or did you have any challenges whilst you were writing the book?
I loved it, actually.
Did you?
I loved
Amazing.
writing it.
How long did it take you?
So I was thinking, I think it took about a year. And actually,
It's amazing.
it was a wintering experience that I had an opportunity to take some time out. It happened to be over winter, which meant, so as an introvert, I was very happy to cocoon myself with the cat at my feet and, write, but every now and then shout down to my husband, can you think of a story about X, Y, Z?
Right.
He was brilliant at that.
Oh,
So
really?
it's quite a
So
few.
you did look for stories.
I've got stories, there's quite a few TV references, because I love a good TV programme.
Yeah.
And also my husband is he's into Formula One and military stories and examples. So there are a few random things like that where I've said, can you help me with the story?
Stories are so important though, aren't they? I was thinking about it the other day actually, because my children are 13 and 14, so I now don't read them a bedtime story anymore.
No.
And it's amazing how in those years that we did, my husband and I took turns every night, and we probably cherished it more than we realised.
Yeah.
The slow, steady pace of a story, the normally positive intent and good nature, or the moral of the story within it.
Yes.
You don't realise that actually as parents you're also absorbing that story. It's not just for that child. And I'm actually moving kind of past that stage with my children. I'm looking much more for stories in movies and in books now to really nourish that part of me that's looking for the human connection, the human story bit that's like strong. And so it's interesting, isn't it, how people really relate to that. And so much in organisations we talk about storytelling, but it's really about the human, isn't it? It's that, tell me something human. I want to know the human thing.
And that's what we remember.
It
is
is,
the story,
isn't
because
it?
how we felt as well.
So
It made me
much.
feel like this, and therefore I remember it. But absolutely.
And it's that archetypal story, isn't it? Like in fairy tales, that's so relatable, like on a very human level. Like we just get it.
Yes.
It resonates with us.
Yes, and
We know it.
we make leaps, don't we? And I was talking to you before about fuzzy logic and intuitive leaps that AI and tech can't make, in the sense of distinguishing what we mean by particular language, and actually it's those stories that develop that wonderful fabric of neural connectivity in our brains that allows us to hear things and actually see and visualize pictures in our minds of what's going on in that story, and I love that, and I think there's a lot more to be done with that in supporting within organisations that are already very good at storytelling, but using that within the master of storytelling to help people feel more human at work. I know it's a really strong kind of core aspect to many leadership programs we work on, and it does have such a good impact, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So it's
Even
really
the process of writing yourself, writing your own stories, that's a very powerful, almost cathartic process to go through. So getting in the habit of writing. My book started as blogs. It was it was a way to sort of process thinking and come up with new ideas, compare different experiences, tell stories, and then before you know it, like, actually there's maybe
a theme
some thinking.
Oh, how fantastic! Well, that's a great example. I said, for people I know out there who are thinking, I think everyone's got a book in them, haven't they? It's just how long do you take to get to your writing a book, and do you ever finish it? Yes. I know lots of people who started it. I've started about 5, and I'm still not finishing them. But I think there's something there, isn't there, about being able to see the threads and the golden thread and actually then make it into something. And I absolutely applaud you for making it into a fully formed book that's out there and available on Amazon. I know the team's going to be sharing the QR code for that. So if you would like to find out more about Sarah's book and go and purchase it, it is a beautiful book. I love the colouring you've chosen as well for the cover. It's very nice. I know that must have taken quite a lot of thought.
You will not believe how many versions of the cover we went back and forth on.
I can imagine. It matters. It does matter about what they see, and they engage with it in a way that's different depending on how it's presented. So I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for coming and sharing it with us today. And I do hope that lots of people enjoy having a little look through and applying it in their organisations. And I'm looking over to the team to see if anyone's got any questions come through. If anyone wants to ask any questions, now's your time. I'm really almost like really struck more by that kind of storytelling piece, the writing of lyrics, the writing of language in organisations that almost we're giving over a little bit to AI, a bit too much, I think. Certainly in some of our marketing pieces, I'm like, we need to step it back a bit. We need to be a bit more of the human kind of almost fallible self. And it's a lovely thing to focus your organisation on, even if in a team. And I think there's probably sometimes we step away a little bit too much from those things that feel like they're outside work. It's like, how much do we bring in? Yeah. But there's change afoot, isn't there? There's lots of people doing those pieces now. So I think one of the things that I was talking about with Keir this morning was actually a poem. So lyrics, storytelling, poetry, there's a huge connection here. And I think what struck me when I was talking with Keir was about the fact that, yes, I do see the positive in people, but I think there's also something very important about we all have a faith and a positivity in that people as humans are inherently good. We are good. We are. And we have to believe that. We do have to believe that because there's a lot going on in the world. And I think it can really certainly can affect me, it affects people I know, my friends and family, when they think about some of the bigger things that are going on in the world and not feeling that sense, that faith, that light at the end of the tunnel. And Keir shared with me that there's a fantastic poem. So I was just going to end on this note, which was a poem by Donna Ashworth from her book Wild Hope, about most people are good, and it was used in World Kindness Day last year, yes, in November. You can
watch the video on YouTube.
Yes, there's a video on YouTube. Go and look; it's fantastic. Got lots of famous people in it. And I'll just read it out here because actually it really struck me, and I really hope that it's a nice thing to end this this live session on for everyone who's listening. Is about most people are good. Most people kiss their pets goodbye every time they leave, and read just one more bedtime story to their children. Most people visit their grandparents even when they have no time, and stop by to check in on quiet friends after a day too long and draining. Most people give money when money is scarce, and most people worry about people they don't even know, day in and day out. When the world seems bad, remember, most people are good. And I thought that was so lovely. So nice. It was such a nice poem. I think it will be something that stays with me when I think about this live session that we've had here today. And I am so honoured and privileged to have you both here. I'm so close. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting us.
It's been fantastic. We will come back to any other questions that come through.
So we will respond to those after the session today. Thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you've enjoyed listening in to our conversation. It's felt like we've just been having a cup of tea and sat having a chat, and unscripted. And I think that's human in itself, isn't it? Just being able to have a good conversation. But opening it up and welcoming everyone here to join us. We've got a ton of really cool events coming up as part of our human series, which this is part of. So please do check out our human series online. It's on our website, and there's a lot of events there. We've got free workshops around strengths and understanding our human strengths. We've got roundtables on all different topics. We have one coming up next month, every month. We have more live events talking about what it means to be human, social imagination and collective imagination, intuitive leaps, and how we can influence our human planet as a species. So some big, juicy topics, and we'd love to have your input to those too. So please do get in touch. Tell us more what you think about these big things that are going on in the world of work and how we can support humanising work more right the way across the world, all industries and all markets. We also have shared, I think, a link to a form. I think Mike's about to share the link to the form, which is for a fantastic piece that we've put together that's brought all of our thinking around what it means to be human into a really exciting visual that gives you really nice talking points. So if you are exploring any of these topics that we've touched on today and want to tap into some of that market intelligence and research that we've been doing whilst we're talking to hundreds of people across the world about this topic, then please use the QR code and the form will mean that you get sent that document relatively swiftly with all the information that is sat within it. I've got to say, it's one of the best things I've seen recently from our resource team here. Well done, Mike. And it's just absolutely on point. It's just packed with all the points that we've been exploring over the last, I would say more so in the last 8 weeks, we've been sharing with different audiences. And I think you'll find it very insightful for your organisation. So make sure you have a little look at that document and let us know what you think. So join us again next month. Thank you very much for joining us here today. Thank you so much, Sarah. Wonderful book. Really excited to have you here. And Keir, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you in front of tons of other people. We talk about this stuff all the time. How exciting. Thank you so much to my team here and to everyone who's joined us. And please do get in touch and let us know what you think.